Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be diving into Abbott Laboratories.
Mm.
Seems like you've given us a ton of research on ABT,
Mm.
and you're really trying to figure out if it's a good investment. So we're here to help you with that.
Yeah, we've gone through earnings reports and analyst opinions, even a little bit of company history to give you a really solid understanding of ABT's potential.
All right, let's jump in. ABT is currently trading at, let me see here, $123.88. And it looks like it had a little bump of 0.54% just yesterday. Not too shabby.
No, not a...
But you know what really stood out to me? Abbott has been paying dividends for over 100 years.
Wow.
That's got to be some kind of sign of stability, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It shows a commitment to shareholders. That's pretty rare these days, I'd say. What's also really interesting is their diverse portfolio. They're not just a pharma company.
Oh, really?
They're also in medical devices, diagnostics, and even nutritional products.
Wait, so you're saying like household names like Similac, Pedialyte, Ensure, those are all Abbott products?
That's right.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and this diversification is a major strength. If one area of the business is struggling, the others can help balance things out. Really smart strategy for the long term.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's look into their recent performance. Their Q4 2024 earnings report shows a 10% organic sales growth. Seems pretty healthy.
It is. It is. They actually exceeded analysts' expectations. What's even more promising are their projections for 2025. They're expecting double-digit growth in earnings per share.
Now, that's a strong indicator of future profitability. I'm seeing here they're doing especially well with medical devices. What's driving that success?
Well, their continuous glucose monitor, the Libre, is a real game changer for folks with diabetes. It's way less invasive than traditional blood sugar monitor, and it's really taken off.
Yeah.
What's really fascinating here is that ABT isn't just focusing on existing markets. They're actively expanding into new markets, especially in Asia, where diabetes rates are just exploding, and adapting the Libre technology for different applications beyond just diabetes management.
So they're not just riding the wave, they're creating new waves.
Exactly.
That's impressive.
And it's not just the Libre. Their cardiovascular devices are also seeing strong growth. The TriClip, for instance, is a minimally invasive device used to repair a leaky heart valve. It's a condition that affects millions worldwide. And they're also innovating with devices like the Aver, Navitor, and Amulet, a really impressive lineup.
It sounds like they're hitting all the right notes. But before we get too carried away here, let's talk about their financial health. Can they keep investing in these growth areas without, overextending themselves?
Well, from what we're seeing, their financials are very solid. They're prioritizing paying down debt, which is always a good sign. But they're also strategically acquiring companies that align with their long-term goals. In 2025 alone, they paid off $1.5 billion in debt, which shows a real commitment to fiscal responsibility.
Okay, so they're balancing growth with responsible financial management. That's reassuring. But as with any investment, there are always risks. What are some potential downsides that we should consider?
Well, their nutrition segment margins are still recovering from 2022 levels. Factors like commodity and freight costs have played a role in that. Those are pretty tough to predict.
Yeah, right. Those external forces can really throw a wrench in the gears. What else?
Competition in the medical device space is fierce, and it's always evolving, right? New players and technologies are constantly emerging. And this raises an important question for you. Can Abbott maintain its momentum and market share amidst all this intense competition?
That's a big question for any potential investor. So we've covered their performance, growth drivers, and financial health. What's the overall opinion from analysts?
The majority have a buy or outperform rating on ABT, with an average price target of around $132. Some analysts are even more bullish, setting targets as high as $138 or even $148.
So even the more cautious analysts acknowledge ABT's strong fundamentals. That's a good sign.
Definitely. It seems they've successfully moved away from COVID-19 testing revenue, which was a big concern, and their focus on these high-growth areas like the Libre and these cutting-edge cardiovascular devices is really paying off.
Okay, so far it sounds like ABT is doing a lot of things right. Diverse portfolio, strong growth in key areas, solid financial health, and positive analyst sentiment. But before we get into their long-term strategy and future outlook, let's take a quick look at their ESG performance. That's become a pretty big factor for a lot of investors these days.
Yeah, you're right. ESG is it's definitely not just a nice to have anymore. Investors are really paying attention to a company's impact, beyond just the numbers.
For sure. So how does Abbott Laboratories measure up when it comes to ESG?
Well, they've actually been recognized for their ESG performance. They've been included in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index for for quite a few years running now.
Okay, so they're not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk. What does that actually look like in practical terms?
It means they're making a real effort in areas like environmental sustainability, their social impact, and how they govern the company.
Gotcha.
For example, they've set some pretty ambitious targets for reducing their carbon footprint and water usage. They're investing in renewable energy and sustainable packaging.
Yeah, I'm always happy to hear about companies that are putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to the environment. Any specific examples that stand out?
Absolutely. Their nutrition plant in Ireland is completely powered by wind energy.
Wow.
That's a pretty significant achievement.
Yeah, that's impressive. What about their social impact? How are they making a difference in that area?
They've got programs to improve healthcare access in developing countries, focusing on critical areas like maternal and child health, infectious diseases, and chronic conditions. And they're also making a conscious effort to promote diversity and inclusion within their own workforce.
It's great to see a company using its resources to address those global health challenges. What about corporate governance? How do they score on that front?
Well, they've got strong ethical guidelines in place, a robust compliance program, and a culture of transparency and accountability. They've also been recognized for having a diverse and independent board of directors, which is really important for good corporate governance.
So overall, it seems like Abbott Laboratories is taking ESG seriously and making some real progress.
Yeah, their commitment to ESG really seems to be ingrained in their operations and long-term strategy, not just a PR move.
Right.
But it's also important to remember that no company is perfect. There are always areas where they can improve.
Of course, no company is immune to scrutiny.
Mm.
Are there any areas where you see room for improvement in their ESG performance?
Well, one area where some investors have raised concerns is their involvement in the production of certain medical devices that have been linked to environmental issues,
Oh, interesting. What kind of environmental issues are we talking about here?
mainly related to the materials used in the manufacture and process of some devices. While these materials are essential for the devices to function properly, they've been identified as having a significant environmental impact, particularly when it comes to disposal and their potential contribution to pollution.
Okay, that's a valid concern. So how's Abbott addressing this issue? Are they just sweeping it under the rug? Or are they taking concrete steps to mitigate these environmental impacts?
They've acknowledged these concerns and are actively searching for more sustainable alternative materials. They're investing in research and development to find innovative solutions that'll minimize the environmental impact without compromising the effectiveness or safety of their medical devices. It's a complex challenge, but they seem to be taking it seriously.
Well, that's good to hear. Are there any other areas where stakeholders are pushing for more action from Abbott on the ESG front?
Yeah, some stakeholders have called for greater transparency in their supply chain. While they've made progress in promoting ethical sourcing and labor practices, there's always room for improvement. Making sure that all of their suppliers adhere to the highest standards, it's an ongoing process.
Right, it's a journey, not a destination.
Mhm.
Companies need to continually adapt and improve their ESG performance to meet evolving expectations.
I couldn't agree more. And Abbott seems committed to that continuous improvement. They've shown a willingness to engage with stakeholders, address concerns, and adapt their practices as needed.
Good. Okay, so they're not shying away from those tough conversations,
Oh,
which is always a good sign. So to wrap up this ESG deep dive, Abbott Laboratories has a solid track record. But like any company, they face challenges in areas where they can do better.
that's a fair assessment. They seem genuinely committed to ESG and they're making measurable progress. But as investors, it's our job to stay informed, engage in dialogue, and hold companies accountable for their actions and their impact.
Well said. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about what the future holds for Abbott Laboratories. Where do they see themselves heading in the next 5 to 10 years? What's their long-term game plan? So we've covered a lot of ground on Abbott's current performance and their commitment to ESG. Now, let's look ahead. What's their long-term growth strategy? Where do they see themselves in the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
Well, their strategy really centers around what they call high growth areas, and it's a smart approach, I gotta say.
Okay.
We've already talked about their success with the Libre and the diabetes market, but they're also making big moves in cardiovascular devices and a really interesting area called neuromodulation.
Neuromodulation.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty high-tech.
It is.
And you break that down for me a little bit?
Right.
What exactly does that involve, and why is Abbott focusing on it?
Sure. It's basically a cutting-edge field that uses electrical stimulation to modify nerve activity.
Hmm.
Think of it as a way to rewire the nervous system to address conditions like chronic pain, Parkinson's disease, even epilepsy. It's a rapidly growing market, and Abbott is really positioning itself as a leader in this space.
So they're betting on these areas, diabetes, cardiovascular, and neuromodulation, to drive future growth.
Exactly. They're anticipating that the global demand for these types of medical technologies is going to increase significantly as the population ages and the prevalence of chronic diseases rises. It's a forward-thinking strategy that aligns with, major healthcare trends.
Sounds like they're thinking ahead.
Yeah.
But how are they actually planning to capitalize on these trends? What specific actions are they taking?
Well, in cardiovascular devices, their focus is on developing minimally invasive procedures and technologies that can improve outcomes for patients.
Okay.
For example, they've been pioneering new approaches to treating structural heart disease, a condition that affects the valves and walls of the heart. Their TriClip device, which we mentioned earlier, is a prime example of their innovation in this area.
It seems like they're always pushing the boundaries of what's possible in medicine. What else are they doing to stay ahead of the curve?
They're investing heavily in digital health solutions.
Okay.
You know, think apps and software that allow patients to monitor their conditions remotely and connect with healthcare providers more easily.
Hmm.
This not only empowers patients, but also helps streamline healthcare delivery.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It really does seem like technology is revolutionizing healthcare, and Abbott is right there in the thick of it.
Absolutely. And it goes even further. They're exploring the frontiers of personalized medicine,
Oh, wow.
using genetic testing and data analytics to develop tailored treatments for individual patients. It's really the future of healthcare.
Personalized medicine, that sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
I know, right?
It's exciting to see Abbott pushing the boundaries like this. Are they relying solely on internal innovation, or are they looking outward for growth opportunities as well?
Well, they're not afraid to make strategic acquisitions to bolster their growth and expand into new areas. For instance, they recently acquired a company specializing in robotic surgery, which is a rapidly growing field with enormous potential. This move further strengthens their capabilities in those minimally invasive procedures.
So they're actively seeking out opportunities to add to their portfolio and stay ahead of the competition. That's a smart move in such a dynamic industry.
It is. It is. And their global reach gives them a significant advantage. They operate in over 160 countries, giving them access to new markets and diverse talent pools. They're truly a global healthcare leader.
That's incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
So, taking all this into account, their focus on high-growth areas, their commitment to innovation, their strategic acquisitions, and their global reach, what's your overall assessment of Abbott Laboratories' long-term growth potential?
Well, I gotta say, they appear to be exceptionally well positioned for continued success.
Okay.
They've got a strong track record of innovation, a diversified business model, a really disciplined approach to capital allocation, and that global footprint that we talked about. They're also demonstrating a real commitment to sustainability and social responsibility, which, as we discussed, is increasingly important for investors.
All right, so let's bring it all together.
Yeah.
We've analyzed Abbott Laboratories from a lot of different angles.
We have.
Their recent performance, their growth drivers, their financial health, ESG initiatives, and their long-term strategy. What's the bottom line for our listeners? What key takeaways should they remember?
Well, while it's crucial to do your own thorough research and consider your own individual investment goals and risk tolerance, Abbott Laboratories really does appear to be a fundamentally sound company with significant growth potential.
Right.
Their diversified portfolio, their focus on these high-growth areas, their solid financials, and positive analyst sentiment all point in the right direction.
This deep dive has definitely provided a comprehensive overview of Abbott Laboratories, but as you emphasized, it's just a starting point.
Yes.
Our listeners should really use this information as a foundation for their own due diligence before making any investment decisions.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that the future is never certain. Challenges, unforeseen events, those are inevitable. But Abbott Laboratories has a long and impressive history of adapting, innovating, and overcoming obstacles. They've been around for over 130 years, and they're still thriving. That says a lot about their resilience and their ability to navigate change.
Yeah, their longevity and continued success are definitely testaments to their strength and adaptability. It's been a really fascinating journey exploring the world of Abbott Laboratories. They're not just a company, they're a vital part of our lives. from the nutritional products we give our children to the life-saving medical technologies they develop.
It's a great reminder that investing isn't just about numbers on a balance sheet. It's about supporting companies that are making a positive impact on the world.
So well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into Abbott Laboratories. We hope you found it insightful and helpful in your own investment journey. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please show your support by subscribing to our channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our future deep dives. We'll be back soon with more in-depth analyses of fascinating companies. Until then, happy investing.